And then Joseph was working for his father, who had a textile mill in Elland. But very soon, I don't know who first, whether his father decided that Joseph was unemployable, or whether between them they didn't work well together. So Joseph left, and well, actually, what he started up on his own. What he did, this first business venture, was to buy up seconds that his father's factory produced, second quality woolen coatings. And they had lots of faults, so he decided to flock print them, to have them flock printed, which covered up the faults. And he finished up selling those pieces for more than they sold the first, because it was a novelty. It was a different new cloth. So, his father gave him credit when he bought the pieces from them, and when he sold them, he could pay them back. So that was the way our first money was made, on selling cloth. And then he started buying very cheap shoddy wool and having blankets manufactured on commission. It didn't last very long before we had we rented a sort of Anderson shelter. It was a corrugated building, and where we started Kagan Textiles. Joseph is playing around with various cloths, trying to make a cloth which would keep you both dry and warm. This cloth, which is a combination of an outer layer, at the time cotton, and then we developed a coating, and after that coating, then it was adhered a woolen lining, and the wool was woven very loosely so that it has trapped air, so that it conserves. The best insulator after a vacuum is air. So it traps the air to keep you warm, and the outer layer, which is proofed, keeps you dry. And so eventually we then tried to sell the cloths. And Joseph, who's a good salesman, in spite of that, no one wants to buy the cloths. So then Joseph decided, okay, we can't sell the cloths, but I think it's a good cloth. We patented it. I think somewhere around 48 was a patented cloth, but nobody wanted to buy it. We're still selling blankets, thank goodness, which keeps us alive. And Joseph said, okay, we'll have to make coats to prove that it's a good cloth and it makes good coats, and we'll make some coats. And Joseph did his usual sales trick. He went to Harrods and he went everywhere to try and sell, starting from the top. Nobody would buy the coats. They said, well, can you have any testimonials? You are telling us it's a very good coat, but does anybody ever worn it? I says, I have. I said, no, that's not good enough. If you say somebody like, a noted famous person has worn it, then maybe. So then Joseph gets in touch with the palace and gets to know James MacDonald, who is a very nice, who is works with, what was he then, the Duke of Edinburgh. And he sort of says, we've got this very nice coat, which I wonder whether the Duke, who does a lot of outdoor shooting and so on, would like to test. It would be very good for him. So he said, well, okay, but where can you get it? He says, well, you go and try and get it from Harrods. So this chap, it's called Gannex. So MacDonald goes to Harrods and says, can I have a Gannex coat? They said, no, we don't have we don't stock Gannex, but we'll get you one. So anyway, that's just a little typical story of Joseph's inventiveness. And so I've still got in my office hanging a picture of Prince Philip wearing a Gannex coat. So we eventually finished up manufacturing coats ourselves, and then we saw this factory which we were sort of starting selling in this factory called Broadley Mills, which was strangely enough a silk factory. There weren't many silk factories in this, but this was a closed down silk factory. And we kept looking at the building and thinking, what a nice building, it would be nice to have it. But it was too big for us, too expensive. Well, the company grew to the extent that we eventually did buy Broadley Mills, and we said we can always rent out the rest of what we don't need. But within a year, we used all the space, we had lots of machinists, we were selling well and manufacturing coats, and in fact, it wasn't many years before we started sending out and having outworkers because we couldn't produce enough coats. So what next? So we are now successful. We've got a large manufacturing concern, and after Philip, Joseph befriends Harold Wilson, or Harold Wilson befriends him. He enjoys talking to Joseph, and of course gets wearing a Gannick's coat. And there comes a day, I don't remember the exact days, when we have we have outworkers, we have the Gannick's factory, we've got another little concern manufacturing coats in Heckmanwijk, an outpost, and across the factories and the outworkers we employ about 1,000 people. Batley, we have of course Batley, I forgot about Batley, we took over Batley and we had a large combining plant there. We used to manufacture then our own linings. Before we used to buy the linings, and now we manufacture our own. Of course, it's common knowledge that because we are large employers and have made a difference to Yorkshire, Joseph gets a knighthood for services to industry. One of our directors presents us with this tray, a silver tray, on the occasion of Joseph's getting the knighthood.